Hello there, pretty people of the internet, and welcome to my channel. My name is Annika, and today I'm going to tell you the birth story of my second child. I had my second baby on February 21st, so like a week and a half ago, and it did not go as planned or expected at all. It was the craziest thing I've ever done, which you will get if you've given birth or thought about giving birth, because it's kind of a big deal. First, I want to do two quick disclaimers. One, this is a birth story, so it's going to be gross, it's going to be TMI. If you're not up for that, if you don't want to hear about babies being born and labor and pain and blood, probably not the video for you. I got a lot of other videos that might be more appealing. I will link some up here and in the description box, so you can click away and do something that's more your speed. Second, I have probably put the term natural birth and surprise gender in either the title or the thumbnail of this video. What I mean is an unmedicated vaginal childbirth and surprise sex. But the internet is full of creeps, so I didn't really want to put vagina or sex in anything searchable or clickable in this video. As I said, this is our second baby. We decided not to find out the sex of the baby, so we went the full 10 months without knowing if we were gonna have a boy or girl. Neither of us were dying to know, so we thought it would be cool to not know. With our first one, we found out at the 20-week ultrasound that it was a boy. For the second one, we waited. It was actually really exciting once we decided that we didn't want to find out, to, hear what everyone guessed. Almost everyone guessed girl. I'll tell you in a little bit whether they were right or not. And it was just exciting. They generally say that second babies come faster and sooner than first babies. Mine definitely came faster, but did not come earlier. I had this baby, I was a week over my due date. So here in Norway they count that as like 41 plus 3. In the US they would count that as 41 weeks. Either way, I was a week over my due date when I had the baby. So I had, for like the last few weeks of pregnancy, been really heavy. I felt baby really low, which the midwives and doctors confirmed, like they could feel the head really low. So baby was low, was big, and I was having like days of contractions, getting ready, but like it never really took off. Then on February 21st in the morning, I woke up at 6:30 and I was like, this is it. I'm having some heavy contractions. My water didn't break to start labor. It started with contractions. And they started logging like every minute and a half. But some of them were not, some of them were like, this is a contraction, and some of them were like, I can't really talk through this contraction. So I woke up, I got my toddler up, I woke up my husband, and I was like, I think it's time. So get yourself ready, go take a shower. We're not in a rush yet, but we're definitely going to be leaving today. About 7:30, so an hour after all this started, I called the hospital and I talked to one of the midwives, and she basically didn't believe me, which I guess makes sense, because having contractions every 1 to 2 minutes is, that's usually when you're in active labor, baby's coming, and they're really, really painful. And they weren't that painful, I couldn't move through a lot of them, but I could, they were gonna get a whole lot worse. So I get what she was saying, but I was also kind of pissed that the hospital was gonna tell me everything was fine when I knew that it wasn't. So we kind of negotiated that I would come in to be observed. She wouldn't tell them to admit me, but to come into the hospital and have them sort of check and see how things were progressing. So my husband and I packed up, we said goodbye to my toddler, I left him with my mom, and we headed to the hospital. I went in, he had to wait until I was admitted or in active labor to be allowed into the hospital because of COVID restrictions. I got in, everything took a long time, but they decided not to put me into observation, but to put me straight into the maternity ward. The hospital were super busy on Sunday, so they didn't have birth rooms ready and available, so they kind of put me in another room until that was fine. I was being monitored, baby's heartbeat wasn't being monitored, my contractions were being monitored, and they measured me in the morning around 9, I think, and I was 2 centimeters dilated and not fully effaced, which just means we were like getting started, but I was far away from giving birth, or so we thought. At around 11, I was more effaced, but still not fully there. I was getting closer to like 2.5 centimeters, 3 centimeters dilated. My husband was allowed to come upstairs, and the contractions started getting really, really bad. Same with my first. I felt my contractions a lot in my like crotch area, at the top of my legs and in my back. So I had a very hard time like standing, but laying down for them was also impossible. It was just every single position was really uncomfortable. I asked around then, around 11, when I could get an epidural, and they were like, we want you to be fully effaced before we can give you an epidural as pain medication. And I was like, okay, probably a few more hours, maybe less, of this hell, and then I can get the epidural and be fine. I had a great experience with the epidural with my first, so I was ready to do that again, but they just had me wait a little bit. So the midwife that had been attending to me was super busy, so I was like at some point calling for the midwife by pulling like the little red thread that you have there, the little alarm pull. I had another midwife come in. She was like, okay, like, we're waiting for your midwife who have checked you a few times because she knows your body better now, so she knows like the progress. But then she just looked at me and she's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna check you, like, you're in a lot of pain. And it was awful. I was like almost crying. I had been in the shower to try to get some heat on it and change up the scenery. I was standing through most of them because for some reason it felt better than sitting or laying down. There was a lot of swearing. I had my husband just talk through them. Everything he did was annoying, which was the same as with the first. It's just when you're in like such bad pain and you can't communicate what you need, so people don't know how to respond to it, just everything they do become really annoying. So eventually he started just reading random artifacts of the internet, and that helped because he was talking, so he was distracting me, but he wasn't like narrating what was going on, because I knew what was going on. I was in a lot of pain. I didn't need him to tell me that. But yeah, midwife came, checked me. She was like, okay, we're gonna get a labor and delivery room ready for you. So a little bit later, we were moved over there. It felt like an eternity. I asked for the epidural again. Again, they were like, you have to wait. I finally got moved over into an actual delivery room around 1 o'clock. Turns out they hadn't submitted any of my information or put any of my information into their electronic system. So at some point earlier that morning, they had to come and draw my blood because they needed to have like my blood type in the hospital. Even though I provided all the paperwork and everyone said it was fine, it wasn't fine. So none of my information was in the system. So before the midwife called the anesthesiologist to have him come over to give me an epidural, they needed to put in all my information to make sure that it was, you know, proper and safe and good to do it. So she was putting in all this information like, do you have diabetes? Do you smoke? What was your start weight at the beginning of your pregnancy? Which are not things you want to go over when you're having contractions every few minutes and they're so bad you're crying, right? Like that's where we're at this point. When I came into the room at around 1, she checked me and I was 5 centimeters dilated. She kept putting in all this information and I was going through my contraction, and at some point, like, they were really bad. She could hear they were really bad and she could see it. So she looked at me and she said, do you feel the urge to push? I was like, yes. I've been feeling it for a while now, but I want the epidural. You're all doing your thing. She was like, okay, I'm gonna give you 2 Paracet, which is like just like a heavy ibuprofen, like strong ibuprofen. She got that ready for me. I took him. She was like, can I check you? So I lay down, she checked me, my water broke everywhere, and she said, your baby's coming, like right now. She hadn't had time to put on like her gown. She was the only one in the room. She asked my husband to like pull the alarm thing to call in another nurse or midwife to have for the baby. And I was like, okay, like, what do you mean we're having a baby now? She's like, I can feel the baby's head, like baby's here, which felt really crazy because like 10 minutes earlier, I'd been 5 centimeters dilated. With my first, they said that usually you progress about a centimeters every 2 hours. So at 5 centimeters dilated, I had in my mind calculated, okay, we are for another 10 hours. But it was like 10 minutes later. That's how strong these contractions were, that they got everything so ready that quickly. So my husband pulls in, another nurse comes in, and they're like, okay, legs up, push. I was like, do we have time for like anything? They're like, we do not have time for an epidural. At this point, it's too late to get anything else going. Your ibuprofen probably hasn't kicked in either because we gave it to you 10 minutes ago. So have fun. They didn't say have fun, but they were like, you got this. It will be easier once you start pushing, like push with the contractions. And it was like a moment of panic where I was like, I can't do this. And then I was like, I don't really have a choice. So I just looked at my husband and I said, I guess we're doing it. And then we started pushing. And 4 contractions later, my baby was out. The pain was, I mean, I could definitely feel like I was pushing out a baby. But compared to how the contractions had been, this was kind of easier because I had something to do. With every contraction, I could push, so I could come closer to having the baby out and having the contractions be done, right? It felt like the contractions had a purpose, and that purpose was to guide me to push out the baby. So instead of the contractions just hurting while I was standing around waiting, I now had like a goal for them. I think I pushed through 4 contractions. I'm not sure how much time it took, but I know that between like 1:05 and 1:36, I went from being 5 centimeters dilated to having a baby in my arms. The midwife and the nurse were incredible. They were very supportive. They clearly like knew what they were doing. They were in it. They were stressed, but they weren't panicked. So like, they were like, we got this. Ideally, we would put on more clothes and figure things out, but this is what we got to work with, and we've worked through so much worse. We're gonna get through this together. They didn't even have time to like run and tell anyone else we were giving birth, to like register what had happened and things like that. So it felt surreal. Still now, like a week and a half later, I'm still processing it. It wasn't traumatic, like it was positive birth experience. It went a lot better than I thought, but I'm still struggling to kind of come to terms with it and how I feel about it, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people who have very quick births say a lot of the same thing, where they felt like they weren't getting the chance to process it while it was happening, so it takes a lot longer after the fact. Also, everyone after the fact has been like, oh, okay, well, at least it was quick, and that's easier, and if you didn't have all this medication, then like your body's having an easier time healing and getting back to normal, which is probably true, but sort of invalidates my feelings about it. So yeah, we had told the midwife that we didn't know if we were having a boy or girl, and that we wanted to like find out together or have Scott tell me, but we didn't really have a lot of time to discuss how that was going to go down because the birth happened so quickly. So she was like, do you want me to just hold the baby up so you can both see at the same time? And I was like, sure, that works, let's just get it out. So we pushed and she held up the baby. She was like, here you go, it's a healthy little baby boy. We really wanted a girl. Everyone said it would be a girl. I thought it would be a boy, so I was right. But I'm very excited to have him. I thought maybe I would have a little more like gender disappointment, but he's perfect, so I'm very happy. There was definitely like screaming involved during the pushing. I didn't feel that like ring of fire that a lot of people talk about. I mean, I could definitely feel like, okay, baby's head is now basically like stuck in my, you know, right there on the way out. But for me, it just motivated me to push more to get the whole kiddo out. I would say I have like, I'm a woman in labor screams, not like I'm being tortured by a serial killer screams. My husband commented that like he's heard people at the gym make more noises than I did, so totally fine. I also do think I pooped myself. No one said anything, but I was really pushing hard and fast, and at some point I was like, I think that's poop. But no one said anything. I don't think anyone would have either. If I didn't mention it to my husband, then he confirmed, but he was like, you were doing a lot of work. You're totally fine. I'm normally super like poop and pee shy. Like I can't pee here when we have guests over because they can hear it. Like, it's really bad. But I was busy. I did a lot of work. It feels the same. Like, it feels bigger and more painful, but things are so close, you can't really control what comes out. As long as a baby ends up coming out, like, you're fine with everything else. So at 1:36 in the afternoon on February 21st, we welcomed our little baby boy, our second baby boy, to the world. Now he's shy and sleeping. And I say little. The homeboy came out at 4.7 kilos. It's 10.5 pounds. So I had to push out a 10.5 pound baby without any pain medication because the extra strength ibuprofen thing hadn't kicked in yet, in like 10-15 minutes. And I fucking did it. There he is. Isn't he cute? He's darling. I'm obsessed with him. So he came out, we did some skin to skin. My husband did the cutting off the umbilical cord, we wiped him down. The midwife said I like barely even got 1st degree tear, which with my first one I got like 2nd degree tears. So a little tearing, but not a whole lot. A little bit of local anesthesia and then a little bit of stitching. Then it was just relaxing with baby. We got moved to a different room. Then we got moved to the maternity hotel for the hospital after a few hours. Hang out there for a few days. Get to know the little one. He doesn't have a name yet. I'm not like withholding it for some reason. We just don't know what to call him yet. Yeah, that was a quick surprise sex gender accidentally unmedicated childbirth. I'm still processing emotionally. Physically, I think I've done a lot better recovering from this pregnancy and birth than with my first one. Obviously, I don't know how much had to do with like how the pregnancy went because my pregnancies were very different and how the actual labor and birth went. I'm not as puffy because I didn't retain as much water because I didn't have like IV fluids all the time. Anyway, I'm getting interrupted again, so anything else I wanted to say I will add as text or talk about in another video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for being here, welcoming this little guy into the world with me. Hey, cutie. Mwah. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that if you want to, and I will talk to you all later when people are not interrupting me all day. Okay, bye.